When I go to work in the morning, I have to go through what's called a diverging diamond. And if I'm paying attention, I can tell if the car in front of me is going to get on the highway or continue through the diamond. And it's not that I'm psychic or have some crazy ability, it's the fact that when we move, we make what are called micro movements, a little adjustment so that we can prepare for going where we want to go. Welcome to this episode of Dog Leads. I'm Steve Bishop, certified dog trainer. So before we start, I wanted to invite you to come see me speak. I'm doing a presentation titled, It Goes Without Saying What Our Dogs Are Trying to Tell Us. We look at body language in dogs, how to tell when they're comfortable, how to tell when they're uncomfortable, and what they're trying to communicate with us. This is something that I've done a few times before, so if you've heard me talk about it, this is another presentation that's coming up in the future. I'm not looking at old information. This one's coming up on May 20th, and it's through the Parks and Recs Leisure Times, and I will leave a link to that and all the other presentations I have coming up in the description. The other thing I wanted to mention, if you've been listening to this podcast on a regular basis, I've been going through a real growing pains. I am trying the third editor that I've tried today. I think we found something that's stable, that's easy to use, and hopefully this is going to make things a lot easier on me, and it's going to look a lot better when I start posting these, or sound better if you're just listening to the audio. The other thing, it hopefully will make the interviews a lot easier and a lot cleaner. There won't be the problems with the microphones like I had with Melody when I talked to her about Unchained Melodies. I'm hopeful, very cautiously hopeful the way things have been going. So I still plan on doing the training tips first of the month and having an interview sometime during the month, but those are a little bit delayed because I have had so many problems. So we're going to do the training video the second week of the month this time. So we talked about what did we talk about? We talked about the sit and the down last time, and so we're going to build on that. So we'll talk about a stay and a recall today. When I first teach these behaviors, I'm not really so concerned with what position the dog is in. When I was teaching Pet Manners 1 and particularly 2, we wanted to make sure we were getting like a sit stay, a down stay, a stand stay, etc. But starting out, or I've mentioned before, my group classes, I work mainly with puppies. I just want the dog to stay in one place. So it's a good idea to have the dog in a sit stay just because they have to exert that much energy to get up and start moving. And a down stay, if they're having trouble with the sit stay, it's that much more energy they have to exert to get up and start moving. So sometimes it's a lot easier for the dogs to hold a down stay than it is a sit stay or a stand stay. So we just want the dogs to learn at first to stay in one position. And then as they get the hang of it, we can start to tweak it a little bit and get the stand stay instead of the sit stay, instead of the down stay. So we want to set this up to your dog's advantage so that they can succeed. We want to set them up for success, as the saying goes. I want to start with the stay, and how we're going to do that. I'd like to have the dog on the left side, and the main reason I do that is because when I'm teaching, a lot of my students tend to go on to showing or agility or rally, some other competitive sport. And a lot of them do require that the dog is on the left side. Now, agility and rally, they require the dog to switch sides. So it doesn't really matter in that which side you start on. But you want to keep in mind that for a dog, doing something on your left side is a totally different behavior than doing it on your right side. So you do want to start with a side, make sure the dog is on that side every single time so they get used to it and they get that behavior down really well. And then once they have it on, say, your left side, then you can switch to the right side and start working on it there. And it should go a little bit faster because they do know the behavior, but it's going to take a couple of trials before they're like, oh, you want me to do that, but somewhere else. That being said, my dogs, I've never competed with them. I've never showed. I've always said, I just wanted a well-behaved companion. Just about every dog I've had, when I ask for a sit stay, for example, they will sit facing me at about, if you've got the clock around you at 12 o'clock right in front of you, they sit kind of facing off of me at about 10 o'clock. I didn't care. They were sitting, they were staying, they were being well behaved, and that's what we're looking for in a good companion. So it goes back to that I've said before, don't make a problem where there's not one. So if you don't care, if you're not competing, if it's not a big deal to you, don't make it one. If you do plan on going on to compete somehow, one, you obviously will want to get a in-person trainer, but you're going to want to pick a side, stick with that until they have that behavior really well, and then you can switch if you need to, depending on what you plan on doing with your dog as far as competitive sports or whatever. So I've got the dog on the left side. I have them sit, and I will have a demonstration video to kind of show you how to get the dog on the left side. What I see a lot in my classes is the person will ask for the sit, or the handler will ask for a sit, and then they move into position so the dog's on their left side. We don't want that, and particularly if you're competing, they're not going to allow that. We need the dog to get to your left side on their own. So what I do is I just kind of lure them. Usually you can lure them in a circle right next to you. If that doesn't work, it takes a little bit of encouragement the first few times, but you can lure the dog as you turn in a circle, and as you're turning, your hand's moving a little bit faster so that they get into that left side position. And this will make more sense if you watch the demonstration video. I'll post that when I post this video also. So we've got the dog on the left side. You want to start with the leg farthest away from the dog if you're asking for a stay. And next episode, I'll do a loose leash walking, which you want to start with the leg closest to the dog. So the visual cue is the leg farther away from the dog. We're also going to use that B hand and hold the dog in position while we move our right leg. And we're just going to spin around, kind of curve our leg around. So we're standing in front of the dog, get positioned, and then we're going to move back to their side and release the treat. We want the dog to hold that position until we release them, even if we're walking up, standing right next to them. So we want to move back to the dog if we're just working on a stay. The other thing, you want to use the hand that is furthest away from the dog. So if the dog's on your left, you want to use your right hand. And that's just a logistical reason. As you turn around and get in front of the dog, if you're using the left hand or the hand on the same side as the dog, you're going to have to twist your arm around in a really uncomfortable manner, and treat's probably going to get out of position and the dog's going to move, and then it just kind of falls apart. So you want to use the hand farthest away from the dog so that as you turn around, that hand stays in position. You can keep it up against the dog's nose. And we want to just step in front of the dog and step right back so they don't have the time and they don't have the distance to get distracted by anything. And they're going to repeat that until they're doing it consistently. As they get the hang of it, you're going to be able to get your hand further and further away, but don't rush it. If the dog's breaking the stay, you're moving your hand away too fast. So just go slow, go at the dog's pace. Also, as they get the hang of it, you're going to be able to start to take a step back, and then two, and then three, etc. The other thing with the stay is when you start to move away, you want to back away so you're watching the dog. The dog knows they're being watched. They're more likely to hold that stay, and you're able to see if they're starting to move. You can correct them or get them back into position. Correction, I just mean, no, wait, stay. Well, we don't want to repeat the cue, but no, wait, good boy, good. Yeah, that type of thing. So we want to encourage them to hold that position. But like I said, they know that they're being watched, so we want to use that to our advantage. As they get the hang of it and you start increasing that distance, you kind of do a sideways walk where you're still watching the dog, but you're kind of turned sideways to them, and then eventually you'll be able to turn your back on them and walk away. So like I said in the last training video, everything builds to the next step. So we want to make sure the dog has a stay, because if they can't hold the stay, then we can't ask them for a recall. They're just going to follow us, which is something fine. I mean, that's great, but it's not what we're working on here. So want to make sure they're holding that stay. But again, we're going to start really small. So we're going to put them in that stay next to us. We're going to turn around in front of them, take a step back. And so you may have to bend over some to keep that treat right against their nose. Then we're going to take our hand away. I like to use the word here. The dog comes to me, and then I ask for a sit. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it kind of defines the end of the behavior. The dog sits, they get the treat, then they can do whatever they want. And another reason for this is they kind of start to learn it as a default behavior. So whenever we get to the end of the behavior, we sit. So the dog starts to learn, if I'm not sure what I want, I should sit. And Duncan was a really good example. If he wanted to go out, he would sit by the door. If it was dinner time and I missed it, he would sit by his bowl. If he wanted attention, he would come up in front of me and he would sit down and wait for me to give him attention. So it's a good way to start learning or start teaching that default behavior of, if I want something or if I'm not sure what to do, I should sit. Now, getting the dog on the left side, right when they're about to get to you, you have your hand out with that treat in it, and you're just going to kind of lure them into that position on your left-hand side. And again, if you need to, instead of just using your hand to lure them into position, you would turn around, get them into that position, and then when you're facing the direction that you originally were, you want to have them on your left-hand side. With the recall and a lot of these behaviors, I've talked about this before, but I wanted to reiterate because it's very, very applicable here. Everybody knows Patricia McConnell is my favorite trainer of all time. And her doctoral thesis, she did a study on vocalizations when people were working with domesticated animals. And I'm going to really oversimplify this. If you're into this kind of stuff, I highly recommend the research. It's a very interesting paper. And she talks about it in a lot of her books also. But the short of it is, what she found was higher, faster vocalizations encourage animals to move. When I'm working on a recall, for example, if the dog's starting to get a little bit distracted, I've gone maybe a little bit too far for the distance, as the dog's coming towards me and they just start to get distracted, it's come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Something really high pitched. If it's Malcolm, I'm working with my dog, it's Malcolm, Malcolm, come on, come on. Almost sound like a turkey almost gobbling, but you want that higher pitch, faster vocalization. It encourages movement, but it also gets their attention. A lot of times also, particularly dogs that are motivated by it, I will use a squeaky toy instead of a food reward. So they start to get a little distracted. Squeak, squeak, squeak. High pitched, really fast. It gets a dog's attention back. And then when they get to me, we ask for the sit. And if you're using that toy, then a little bit of tug, or let them take it and play with it and chew on it and whatnot. Now, the opposite of that is also true. So longer, lower tones encourage domesticated animals to slow down or stop. So, when the dog gets to me, it's sit, down, something like that. Patricia McConnell used this example. Think about when you're riding a horse, and I have mentioned this before now. I remember doing this in front of the microphone. It feels kind of silly, but it's okay because it does work. So a good example is when you're riding a horse. A lot of people are familiar with, when you want the horse to go, it's or gee, something like that. High-pitched, really fast vocalization. And then we want the horse to stop. It's whoa. So it's that longer, lower tone. So use that to your advantage. This is going to come in really handy when I talk about loose leash walking next episode, or next training episode. There's one final thing to keep in mind when we're teaching any behavior working with our dogs. I've talked before about dogs have more rods in their eyes than people do, so they're more keyed into movement. Most of their communication is body language and how someone moves and what they're trying to convey that way. With the recall in particular, where I see that fall apart the most is people will come to me and they'll say, my dog's breaking the stay early, what's going on? And I say, well, let's see it. Almost every single time, it is something the person is doing. And usually they're starting to bend over just a little bit. So when I talked in the introduction about those micro movements, it's that little bit of a head movement forward. The dog anticipates the treat getting down to nose level, or the person is preparing to, what I call, receive the dog, where the dog comes to them and they give them pets and praise and treats and whatever. So we really want to be aware of our body language. Now, with the recall, this isn't a bad thing if you don't mind that being the cue for the recall, but you just need to be aware of it. So I've mentioned several times, anytime I am getting a behavior that I'm not wanting or not anticipating, the first question I ask is, what am I doing that the dog is misinterpreting? So keep that in mind when you're working with recalls, or again, any behavior where the dog's not responding the way you want them to. What are you doing wrong that the dog is misinterpreting, or that the dog isn't understanding? So I'll stop there. I'll put a link in the description, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put a link. I don't know where they are, and I'm not going to be one of those pointers, but I'll put a link also in the video. So look for that. You can click on it and see me demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about. So thank you for joining me. If you found this interesting, please leave a like. Please share it if you know somebody that might find this helpful. I'm really trying to build up the subscriptions. I'd like to get to 100. Just starting out, a lot of rough road getting there, but I'm trying to build that following. So if you know somebody who would enjoy this, please share it. And as always, if you have any questions, if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, or anything you'd like me to delve a little more deeply into, you can always email me at bishopsgatetraining@gmail.com. And we will see you next time.